Well, hello everybody, and good afternoon, good evening. Ricardo Cabrera here with the Latino Chamber of Commerce of Boulder County, and together with Marta Lochamin, we are going to talk to you about the NAHREP 10 principles and disciplines. This is our second recording, our second session of 3, and today we're going to talk about disciplines number 3, 4, and 5, which is what I call the financial disciplines. Discipline number 2 is a little financial too, but today we're focusing on this 3. So Marta, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Ricardo. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm excited to talk about the NAHREP 10 disciplines.
Yeah, so let's start, jump right in. Tell us a little bit about what the NAHREP 10 and how they came about and why we're here.
Sure, yeah, and so for folks who are participating, thank you. And our encouragement is going to be to share this information out because, and you'll learn a little bit more as we go along. This is the second in the series. If you jumped into this one and didn't see the first one, I would say return to the first one and watch that one too, because it's all foundational and will come together. The NAHREP 10 is specifically 10 disciplines that Ricardo will talk a little bit more about. But the background, it's really important, is this work comes from the HIspanic Wealth Project. And that data really got pulled together in about 2013, 2014. And as the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, which is NAHREP, they focus originally with this organization. I've been a member for about 20 years and also have led with executive leadership here in our NAHREP Denver Metro in different ways, in different roles. And our initial work was truly around the homeownership rate of Hispanic sustainable homeownership in the United States. And the Hispanic Wealth Project, during the time frame I was just talking about, really was taking a look at what happened specifically in our communities after the mortgage crisis. And historically, what has homeownership looked like? What is that gap about? How does that affect our wealth and our prosperity and those pieces in our communities? And so the Hispanic Wealth Project was developed at that time to look at 3 focuses versus only homeownership. So continuing the homeownership goals, to add into the work around small businesses and also investments. And so as we move through the NAHREP 10, you'll see those themes, as Ricardo just talked about, kind of develop.
Yes, thank you, Marta. So let me add to that a little bit. The whole goal of investing, home ownership, and the NAHREP 10 disciplines, which are really a set of tools and guidances for us to be able to get to a place, right, to a place of wealth, is to close the wealth gap between the Hispanic population and the rest of the United States. It's a gap that is to the tune of 8 to 1, which even though it's closing, it's not closing fast enough. I mean, we know that the Hispanic population has more college degrees, we hold better job positions, we're more educated, we're well integrated, but still that wealth gap exists. And the goal of the NAHREP 10 is to give you, again, a set of tools and guidances that will help you get there. So with that, let's start by showing you here the NAHREP 10 disciplines. You can read this as we talk here for a moment, but I just wanted to throw in here the idea of building wealth takes time. Building wealth takes discipline. There are no get-rich-quick schemes. You have to have a plan. You have to know what you want to look like in the future, right? If you say, I want to be Jane Rich, or if you want to be Joe Normal or Mr. Poor, you get to pick. I mean, most of us don't want to say, I want to be poor when I'm old, right? But you get to pick that now. And these disciplines will help you figure out how to get to that point in 10 to 20 years. We're talking about if you're 30 and you're retired at 65, well, then you have 35 years. If you're 40 and you retire at 65, you have 25 years. So the younger you start with this plan, the better you're off you're going to be, because it's way easier to reach wealth with the more time that you have. So let's go and start talking about the first of our disciplines today, which is actually the fourth discipline.
Yep.
And the fourth discipline is
Do you have the English version? Oh, you're bringing it up.
Oh, I have the Spanish version. Yeah, sorry, I do have the English version. Give me a second. So while I do that, why don't you talk about the fourth discipline, which is
yeah, I can read it out. So the fourth discipline is minimize debt, because it is the biggest enemy to wealth. And we kind of alluded to this, talked about it just a teensy bit the last time in the first session, but we want to focus on it today. And to me, this is one of the simplest conversations that we can start as colleagues, as networkers, especially in our business, especially with our friends, with our families, even, to really start talking about minimizing our debt. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that is the title of the first discipline that we're going to talk about today, which is discipline number 4.
Okay, so I'm about to pull it up here in any moment now, but while we get there, why don't you tell us your so I have which is the investment in real estate, because they're the best and safest way to build wealth. That does not count. The real has compound interest. This is a compound interest slide, which goes like this. So say it takes you $1 a year to live, right? So you live on $1, and you are 35, and you have 35%, so you can maintain your standard of living to the future. So the question is that 20% of it, so you make $1, saving 2%. Your 5 years, saving 20% of what you get. So how are you going to make the $5 over time? And the answer is compound interest. If you save $1 today and you make 10%, then at the end of the year you have $1.10. And the next year, now invest $1.10, and then it's going to grow to about 5. And so you're making your own that is growing all. That is what it's compound interest. And that's an investment that you are saving 20%. You'll have those $5 in compound interest. That's why it works. Now, let's talk about estate and stocks. Why does it point those out specifically?
So there's a couple different pieces, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit more, but when you have real estate in this country, and just from statistics, economic cycles, et cetera, is one of the safest investments. What we in the industry tend to do, and we saw this after the mortgage, and one of the reasons why the NAHREP 10 disciplines were developed was because community has the majority of our savings, our retirement plan, income, our money, et cetera, saved in our house. And so one of the reasons that this slide to me is really important is because we also have to start looking at the way that we can have diversify our income and our savings. That is one in real estate, and it may be other types of real estate. It might be property, it might be land, it might be a second home, it might be an investment home. And as this slide indicates, how do we start investing in stocks? And how do we start moving away from cash economy, which a lot of our community is, comes from that background historically. And so that's the encouragement I see from this slide as well.
Absolutely, and it all boils down to compound interest. However you invest your money, they call it an investment vehicle, right? So it could be real estate, it could be stocks. There are other investment vehicles, but this one's are the safest by far, because if you do it right, you're not going to lose your money. I mean, the goal of investing, which is a danger in any way of investing, is that just like you can make it, you can lose it. And these guys are the safest ones. And when you're talking about retiring investment, you definitely don't want to lose your hard-earned money. You want to make it grow at all costs. And we're going to talk about more about this during our discussion here in a moment. But let's talk about the next principle, which is discipline number 6, and it is know your net worth, including the value of your business, because you cannot improve what you don't measure. So Marta, tell me your experience with this slide.
So I think this is the, one of those pieces of, for a lot of folks, if you haven't gotten into finance conversations, this concept of net worth, like what does that really mean? And it can seem a little overwhelming. And yet the challenge here is, if we don't know where we're at, then it's true. We don't have a place to start measuring. And so to be able to look at, in our personal, let's say that we were a self-employed person, this is where we could start working on our profit and loss and start understanding really what are our costs, some of the things you introduced in our last session about the, what's the income coming in, what's the costs that are going out, those types of pieces if we have our own business, or even, and I encourage youth a lot to do this too, if you're working for someone else, sit down and start having these conversations. Ask your boss, hey, can we sit down and just, can you talk to me about how you value this business, not from a personal, not how do you value me as an employee, but really what is the value of the business, so that we can start having these types of conversations. Because if we don't even know how to measure, and we don't know how to look at where we are in comparison to other businesses or other self-employed situations, et cetera.
Excellent. Yeah. So the balance sheet, as it's talking here, this is the balance sheet slide. So profit and loss is one way to look at your income and expenses. Your balance sheet is your net worth. So your balance sheet is really easy. You have two columns, right? On one column, you're going to put in all your assets. So everything that's worth money to you. So your house, your car, your jewelry. Maybe some people will say if you have art, valuable art, your jet skis, your furniture in your house. You can go as far as you want, as long as you can sell it at Craigslist and put a number behind it. You add it up. So you add all that up, and you end up with a number. Those are your assets. Your savings account, your checking account, your investments account, the value of your house. All of that are your assets. So on the other side, you're going to put in your debt. So I am assuming that if you have a house, you have a mortgage, and that loan balance at that particular time goes on that column. If you have a car that you bought on a loan, that goes there. If you have any personal debt or credit card debt, that goes there. So you add all your loans, all the money that you owe, those are your debits. You add those up and you get a bottom line. You subtract one from the other one, and that is your net worth. And that's a magical report and a magical number, because it tells you two things. One of them, you can see if one of them is way off, compared to the other one. If you can see that your debts are way high, that you owe too much money, or that your car versus its debt, it doesn't make sense, then you can act on it and change something now so it helps you in the future. And also that bottom line number is really the number that you are going to look for your retirement savings. So if that number, in our $1 example, if that number is 35, then you know now that you have enough money saved and to live for the rest of your years. If that number is too low, then you have to do something or change something to make this the right balanced number for yourself. So that is discipline number 6. So let's go and talk about, that's next week's slide. Let's go ahead and just talk about the relationship between these 3 slides, Marta, and how do you think, how did they relate each other? Why did I call this the financial slides?
Well, I mean, it's the piece of exactly what you're just starting to talk about, is that, getting to the point of where we know what our net worth is. And I think this is a really important data point for you'll start seeing and feeling, oh yeah, that's true. And the reason why there is obvious, if I've got the cash and I can see it, it's tangible, and I can see it going away, and it helps me make a decision at the grocery store if that's a need or if it's a want, which is something we talked about in the previous series. And if it's on a debit card or a credit card, the tendency is, and there's data on that just shows we will spend more because it doesn't feel like we're spending it, right? And of course, the danger there can be the use of a credit card for items that aren't necessary, you don't have a benefit for, and or you're not keeping track of yet how that credit card, the interest rates, et cetera, are affecting you. So they're all connected, because when you spend money in that way, then it doesn't allow you to use it in number 5, which is in investments. Whatever those investment tools might be, the more that you spend without knowing where it's being spent, or interest on a credit card somewhere else, it minimizes the ability to do other types of investments, which is going to affect your net worth.
Yes, that's a good explanation of the relationship there. So let's step back here for a second. I want to show you what I was talking earlier about my favorite calculator that you can see here. So coffee. Everybody goes out and buys coffee. It's a great industry. And I'm going to give you the example of coffee. This example here says that if you buy a $5.75 cup of coffee every day for 5 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month, that means you're spending $115 a month just in coffee, right? So talking about future value, talking about investing, saving, and all that. This makes sense to me because, you know, it's a number thing. So for 10 years, if you do that for 10 years, you're going to end up spending $13,800. Okay.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money in 10 years. Now, check this out. If I buy this, let's suppose, well, I'm going to buy this on a credit card because, for the example, I can't afford it, and I'm never going to pay this credit card. Okay. A credit card.
Well, and
usually,
Ricardo, I want to stop you for just a quick second, because it may not be that we can't afford that cup of coffee, but it becomes the habit of just using my card. So
right.
just put that out there, because sometimes it's just, oh, and then I forget I actually put that on my card.
Right. So you buy this on a credit card. I'm going to put in here that, you know, you're paying 12% on this credit card a year. That number in 10 years now is $26,000 plus. Now, the reality is that you're not going to find a credit card that gives you money for 12%. They're all 18 to 24%. So let's say this is an 18% credit card. Now you're talking about $38,000. That is if you don't pay your payment. Now, your point, Marta, is very important. I don't use cash. You know, not to contradict your example. For me, a credit card, it is actually a debit card. I don't use a credit card. I use a debit card. But it's a convenience thing. You know, if I use it, I pay it off at the end of the month just because it's convenient. You know, if you use a credit card because you can't afford stuff, I mean, that can easily get out of hand. And this is the example here that we're trying to avoid. So let me show you here what happens if you do this for 20 years. Okay, look at this. For 20 years, your number becomes astronomical. If you do this for 30 years, I'm just going to put it in there, and I'm not even going to read it because it's ridiculous. You know,
Wow.
It's really a big number. So now let me turn the same calculator around, and let's go back and say, talking about investing 20% of what you make, right? The same calculator will give us the same value for the investment factor. So if I make $35,000 a year, right? If it's a family of two and they're both working and the family can easily make $60,000 a year, 20% of that is $12,000 per year, which is about a little less than $1,000. It's about $1,000 per month. So just for the example, let's say we're talking about $500, right? So say you're saving $500 a month, right? And if you save $500 a month for, we said our example was 35 years, you end up with $210,000 if you just put your money in the mattress, right? Earlier we talked about compound interest.
Right.
Compound interest is the money growing over itself. So if I'm going to put in $500 a month and I'm going to make this, I'm going to say I'm going to invest it somewhere and it's going to grow at 8% per year, right? This number now becomes a little bit bigger, right? So this is approaching the number that you need when you retire so you can maintain your standard of living for the rest of your years, right?
Yeah, Ricardo, can you put that $115 number back in there? Because for a lot of our viewers, $500 might seem, you know, if you're not saving right now and you have never heard these NAHREP 10 disciplines, that might seem overwhelming. But if we think about the coffee example and that $5.75 that you already gave as an example, what'll that look like for our viewers?
Right, so if you're doing this at 8%, you're going to end up with $263,000 after 35 years. Now, 8% is relatively easy to get in any investment. In real estate and in stocks, you should be able to, with little effort, get 12% per year over time, right? Sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 8 because the stock market goes up and down, and so do homes. But for practical purposes, just assume it's a straight line at 12%. Now your number is $739,000. If you're living on,
I think that's a fantastic number.
Yeah, so let me put a little calculation here. If you spend if your standard of living is $35,000 a year, right? Rent, utilities, and this and that, and you have $765,000 saved, let's say your standard of living is $35,000. Now you have enough saved for 21 years, right? That's a nice number, and you can reach it easily. Now, let me go back to the $500 number that I picked in there, and you're right. I kind of picked it out of the air, but I'll tell you what. If you have a car and you buy it on a loan, how much do you think you're spending a month to keep this car? It's more than $500. You know, if you buy a $30,000 car on a loan that you pay 9% for it, you're going to be paying about $400 a month for this car. And then you have gas, and then you have maintenance, and then you have insurance. You end up spending $800 a month on your car. So one of my pet peeves is people, don't buy a car, buy a house, right? Don't spend your money on a car because it's an expense. It's not an investment. It's taking money out of your pocket every month.
Wow, that's
so
good.
I say, go buy a used car. That same down payment you gave for your car, use it for a used car. It's a simple thing. It's a low ego thing. You know, you're not going to impress anybody. And if you do have a nice car, nobody cares except for yourself, right? And I say it's really easy if you're working after college. I mean, I'm assuming that, you know, you don't have just standard debt, that it's really easy to save $500 a month. The coffee example is great because it's one thing that you can change in your routine that will allow you.
We're talking about lifestyle changes here. So I think both of those are really good examples for.
Yes. And so the first discipline is to understand what wealth and prosperity is, or the rest doesn't matter. And that's exactly the lifestyle change that we all make it at some point. I mean, you don't know any grandma out there that is living for, splurging money. And that is a classic example that we all learn to make that necessary lifestyle change at some point in our lifetimes. What we're trying to do is get you guys to do it sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And that in my mind ties the three concepts we talked about today. You know, it helps you save 20%. It helps that 20% grow into the future. Absolutely no debt. And you just have to count your money every once in a while, you know, every 3 to 6 months. You don't have to do it every month, but count what you have, figure out where you're at, write it down and check it from last year to this year. And it's liberating to see how that graph goes up and how it changes your lifestyle just by looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a good example of, you know, what are some small things that people can do, because I think that's, you know, most likely people won't jump on and be able to keep all 10 disciplines in action. That's just not how we work. That's not how we function. But if you choose one of these ones that we're talking about today, whether it's 4, 5, or 6, you know, hopefully you'll grab one of these ideas that, okay, this one I can do.
Right.
And then slowly you'll be able to develop and start working on all of them because they're all connected.
Absolutely, they're all connected. You start with the low-lying fruit, right? And you hang on to that, and you start making those small lifestyle changes. Let me jump back to one thing you said earlier, Marta. You talked about debt, and you said there's good kind of debt and there's bad kind of debt. What did you mean by that?
So, and this is where I think everybody has their own opinion in regards to, I believe that buying a home and using a mortgage or a loan to purchase a home is a good debt, because we have to have some place to live. And no matter where you live, you will have housing costs. To me, those are what's considered a fixed cost. It's something that's going to happen no matter what. And so my preference in my work has always been about helping people get to that point of home ownership so that you're paying a mortgage versus paying rent. And so to me, I consider that good debt. And some people will have different varying opinions around student debt, whether that's good debt or bad debt. And I think you and I may have had this conversation in the past. Some people feel like student debt is good debt from the standpoint of it will potentially get you to another place, another career path, another income bracket, another potential, et cetera, that way. And then there's other folks who believe that that could be bad debt as well, because there may be other avenues of getting scholarships or grants or saving money to be able to access secondary education without putting yourself in the financial burden of what, in the United States right now. I'm sure that you've looked at that data. We have $1.8 trillion of student debt out right now. And so is that negative? Does it create issues for folks wanting to buy homes in the future, and our young folks, our millennials, et cetera? And certainly in our Hispanic Latino community, absolutely. So I can see the argument on both sides of bad and good debt in regards to student loans. But I think we can agree that kind of where we were with the fourth discipline, when we talk about debt, if you're using your credit card because you can't afford what you're about to put on your credit card, to me, that could be construed as bad debt, because you're putting your financial future, your net worth, your sense of security, et cetera, at risk, if it's something that's not a necessity.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, good debt, bad debt. A house is good because it's putting money into your pocket over time. A credit card debt is bad because it's taking money out of your pocket over time. That's the income versus expense concept. And the student one, you're right. It depends who you ask. I happen to think that school debt is okay, and I'll tell you why. Because that debt will pay you year over year. That education will pay you back for the rest of your life. Now, let me put an asterisk on that. That debt can also get out of hand, because it is a tragedy. I mean, it's a crying tragedy if you get out of school and you have $150,000 worth of loan school money. If that's your case, I would say, go to school, but pay as you go. You don't have to borrow that much money to go to school. You don't have to finish school in 4 years. You can finish it in 6 or 7 years. It's okay. You don't have to go, you don't have to go to a 4-year college. You can go to a community college.
Absolutely.
You could learn a trade. You could learn anything. But if you can borrow, if you have to borrow money, borrow just enough. Get a job. Don't borrow money to pay for your rent and your car and your food and your school, because then you are going to get out of school with $150,000 in debt. Borrow money for tuition and work for the rest. Well,
and I think that's a really good point, and it kind of puts us together with all these other different disciplines. And to me, that's when you talk about the tragedy of having that much student loan debt, it connects for me the tragedy on a higher level about not having financial literacy really available for our community members in this country. Because the fact that we have people finishing in a university or a college with over $100,000 in student debt is connected to the fact that we haven't had some of these preparation, planning, budgeting conversations up front.
Absolutely, guys. And if you're our public, if you're still watching this after 30 minutes of us talking, here's what I can tell you. Educate yourself. And what you're doing right now is learning about financial literacy. It's about the right way of thinking about wealth and prosperity, right? These are basic principles that we should learn in high school, as you say. They don't teach us these principles. They let us, society lets us learn these principles, through the school of hard knocks. By the time you're older, then this stuff starts making sense to you. And if you're hearing it today, really pick one or two of these principles and start practicing them today. I can tell you that from personal experience, and I'm sure you as well, Marta. Personal experience has told me that these guys are easy, they're not hard, and they work. And read, educate yourself, find a book. I can tell you 2 books that have made a lot of sense to me and that put me on this path were Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And the other one is called The Millionaire Next Door. I can't remember who wrote that book, but look it up, The Millionaire Next Door. And they both talk about the concepts of investing, about knowing how to save your money and how to invest it. And of course, you have to be able to be smart enough to have a budget, for example, so you can save this money, so you know that you're not splurging your money, and have the sense to buy a house instead of a car. So you can have those hundreds of dollars every month that you can save over time.
Yeah, that's great. And I think having a couple of resources out there will be helpful. And I'm hoping at the end of our full series that we'll have, you know, some other lists. And I know that the Latino Chamber of Boulder County historically has done different sessions and different workshops and things like that. So I'm, you know, again, want to say thanks for inviting me to participate, but also encourage members of the Latino Chamber of Boulder County to continue these dialogues in some new ways. And we'll talk about that later too.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I think we can close up for today. Thank you, Marta, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And remember, no debt, don't borrow money, save 20% of what you make, and count your chickens. Count what you have. Do a balance sheet exercise for yourself every once in a while, because it's enlightening and it will change your lifestyle. Guys, share these disciplines with your family, share them with your friends and your colleagues and your clients, because this is how we can change the world, and it will change your life as well. So until next time, we have 4 more disciplines to talk about in about a week or for our next session. And again, thank you, Marta. Until next time.
Thank you.